Assalamu alaikum. Strange lesson tonight. Gharib, but good. I think it's good. Because you know how I'm always analyzing meanings of words. And especially when they're sounds in Arabic, and then they translate into my brain, sometimes in English sounds. And often there is a connection. So I was, subhanallah, this is something really, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. I was planning on speaking about Halloween to you because I'm in America now and I have memories of Halloween. It's a holiday. It's supposed to be cute and funny, but really it's satanic and evil. But people are starting to discover now what Halloween really is. And unfortunately, the roots are traced back to Ireland. And it's Kufr Shirk holiday about the new harvest. Because in the cold Western countries, the end of October, which is when Halloween occurs, is when it starts to get really cold. So by the time November is around, there's no more harvest. So they would connect this Halloween as honoring the spirits who will give them enough to get through the winter. And I don't want to go into the details because it has a lot to do with death and rebirth. And it's not a pleasant way to think about life. Our death. Now, when we were young, they connected it, of course, this is what they do with evil. Who are they? Well, probably some Yehud somewhere. They connect it with fun and something children will love. Like Christmas, connected to Santa Claus, although the Protestant church would often call it Satan's cause because they're a little bit strict on some of these things, more than Catholics, because Catholics is usually really connected to more freaky, creepy things. It's hard for me as an ex-Catholic who knows about all the different Christian sects and Hindu sects and Buddhist sects, and finally I found Islam and I'm just so grateful. Islam is so simple and perfect, but that doesn't mean I'm not supposed to warn you, okay? So we just had, for the first time that I'm aware of, a major celebration of Diwali, the Hindu festival, here in America, and it was everywhere. And it was advertised everywhere, and people are going around saying Happy Diwali, and anything connected to Hinduism is really bad. It's got to do with many, multiple gods. They call the monkey god, Satan god. The goddess of evil is Shiva, and I don't want to go into it because it's all wrong, let's put it that way. So as I'm becoming aware in America of the Diwali business, I started to think about Halloween. Now, we have so many holidays, and I have memories. Halloween was one of my favorites. Maybe it was my favorite because I always loved sweets. And, I'd take dessert before dinner any day. Candy, cake, ice cream, whatever. So what Halloween was for us, instead of the truth about it being shirk, we would all go out at Maghrib, or maybe a little before Maghrib. At that time it was maybe 5 o'clock, 5:30. And we would take a bag. Well, in my day, it was a pillowcase. Because in my day, we didn't have all the commercialization that we have now because, I was born in 1947, and that was when Israel was also born. So that's when we got the influx of the merchant class, you may say, mostly from, you know what I mean. And that's when the advertising business began to flourish, with all of its enticements to spend. So that's when we got all the really awesome fashion and all of the amazing variety of not food, but sweets. You know, how many different kinds of cake and ice cream and candy can you imagine? And that's when you can say the 50s was the last normal era in America. So I was born in 47. By the way, same year television came. And then the 50s were the heyday, they say, post-World War II. America boomed with happiness and plenty for everyone, and the happy nuclear family with the husband and wife never worked, and the two beautiful children, and the garden, and we would call it the white picket fence, where the immigrants could move out of the city and finally buy their own home. Of course, you know, that's the mortgage. It's all connected. But anyway, getting back to the candy. So in my day, we had a pillowcase, and we'd put it on our shoulder. And the thing you're supposed to do is knock on the door and say trick or treat, meaning you either give me a treat or you're going to get a trick. Now, I had a lot of brothers, so I don't know what they were up to. I would go out with my girlfriends, but in those days, your parents didn't go with you. They would let you go and roam around the neighborhood. Not far, but we could roam around the neighborhood for a couple of hours. I'm supposed to be back home by like 7 so that we could go to school the next day. But the trick-or-treat idea was, if you don't give me something delicious, I'll probably egg your car. Or I'll egg your house, egg your windows. I don't know about that part. I never did it, but I don't know. Spending too much time on this memories. I loved Halloween. And then when we got home, we were supposed to count our candies and trade with our brothers and sisters, and then bring it to school and trade. Like if you didn't like nuts, you wouldn't want the Hershey bar with nuts, you'd get the plain Hershey bar and trade it. But my mom, she forced my dad. Remember how much I hated this. She said, no, she felt that we shouldn't have all this candy at our disposal in our room. So she forced my dad to be the bad guy and put it in his closet, his clothes closet, with a key, and lock it up and give us a candy bar every day, one candy bar. We thought my mom was a monster. But anyway, Dad did it. And every day we'd come home from school and wait for him to come home from work, and he wouldn't get home till like 7, and then he'd eat, and then, oh my goodness, by the time we would get our candy bar, it would be time to go to sleep. And then I used to accuse him of eating all the good ones because my dad was also like me. He loved sweets. I'd say, Dad, what happened to all the Nestle's Crunch? You ate them all. At that time, there were 5 of us running around. You know, the age, I was the oldest. Long story short, I was sure my dad was eating my candy. That's the end of that story. But why am I now going to get very serious? That was a funny intro, wasn't it? 8 minutes? It's okay. Because now we're going to get into the words of Quran. And Allah did this, and I tell you, it's a miracle. Things like this happen to me all the time. I was thinking about how I can explain to you Halloween and the Day of the Dead, because the Mexicans have a similar holiday, and they call it the Day of the Dead, where they celebrate death, and they put, now in public school, you've got skulls and evil pictures all over the walls in the Hispanic community, skeletons and skulls and witchy, devilly things on the corridors of the schools, because to make the Hispanic kids happy. So I'm trying to imagine, how am I going to give this lesson and combine Halloween with all the shirk and kuf and that, and the Day of the Dead. It's another holiday, but it coincides with what I'm trying to tell you, that they they make light of evil. Like Shaitan says, "Azayyan laka amalak." You are going to have your deeds seem fun, beautiful, to take you away from the reality. Now, let me just tell you, this hurts my heart. Another thing were the costumes. When you would go out on Halloween, you had to dress up as something, make believe. You could be a princess, you could be a nurse, you could be a doctor, you could be a lion, or you could be any kind of fantasy, fairy, something. And you would buy the costume because now they're readily available. At that time, they were like $6 or $7. You'll never guess what I dressed my son up as. And I feel very, very pained to tell you this. But this just goes to show you brainwashing through advertising, commercialization, in the guise of fun. I dressed my son when he was, at this point, 5. Yeah, 5. As a little devil. The costume was completely red, stretchy material, so his little legs and feet would go inside like leggings, and then the costume would come up, long sleeves, and up as a hood with black horns sticking up and a black tail hanging in the back, and it came with its own little pitchfork. Now, Satan was, I don't know about now, portrayed as having a pitchfork, like a rake, a long-handled rake, where he was portrayed to be able to throw people into the hellfire with this rake. My son was a little devil at the age of 5. Of course, I'm laughing. He looks so cute. I took pictures. So now all I can say is Allah will forgive me. I was totally ignorant of the significance of any real... Did I believe in Satan? Yes, I believed in heaven and hell. I was in Catholic school. But they never really dwelled on anything. They told us about angels. We have a guardian angel. But they didn't tell us what guardian angels did except push you away from a car if a car wanted to hit you, stop you from falling off a cliff, something like that. It was all very elementary and very simplistic. But as far as the Satan idea, the devil, diablo in Spanish, they would say, oh, he'll get you in trouble. So don't be a bad girl, don't lie, cheat, steal, etc. But it was very simplistic. Not like Islam, which is very, I won't say complicated. Islam is very comprehensive. So you learn that Satan is the reason, because he whispers. And he gives you ideas that you didn't have before. And he makes you want and like those ideas. Now, this is what Allah did last night. And I was preparing this lesson and how should I do it, whatever. Look what Allah did. I've read this Quran, look, it's falling apart. I mean, I've had 5 Qurans, and with the 41 years I've been a Muslim, they're all worn out, the pages, so I keep getting new ones. This one is about time to get a new one, but it's an old one, but I like it because it has so many on the footnotes. You can write in pencil on the side and on the bottom. It's called Hawamish. It's allowed, as long as it's not in pen. I'm going to read this and I'm going to pause, and you're going to see why I'm so excited about this today. This is Surah Ibrahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر إلى الذين بدلوا نعمة الله كفرا وأحلوا قومهم دار البوار. Now, I'm going to finish this page. This is halfway through the page. But I want to pause here. This is verse 28. Again, I'll say it 2 more times. ألم تر إلى الذين بدلوا نعمة الله كفرا وأحلوا قومهم دار البوار. ألم تر إلا الذين بدلوا نعمة الله كفرا وأحلوا قومهم دار البوار. Okay. I'll translate it and then I'll get into the actual words and the meanings and the pronunciation, because that's the big deal of this whole thing. You can just translate this as you like if you have your English Quran next to you, but that's not where I'm going. Don't you see those who exchanged Allah's favors for kufr, for disbelief? وَأَحَلُّوا قَوْمَهُمْ دَارَ الْبَوَّارِ. They made for their kaum, their people, the house of ruin. Straightforward, right? أحلوا. أحلوا. Again, أحلوا. ألف ح لام واو شدة فوق اللام. أحلوا. Keep saying it and think about how it looks. أحلوا. If I was sophisticated with a studio, I'd be able to write this under and you would see it. I stopped last night. I said, Halloween. Halloween. Now, this is a verb. Hallu. The aleph is an additional letter. I'm not going to go into the grammar. I want to make this simple for you. If you take off that aleph, which is a grammatical reason, the root here is ha-la with a shadda. That means two lambs. Hallu. Halloween actually has two L's. There's more. In the first part, Alam tara ila alladhina baddalu ni'matallahi. Baddalu means to exchange one thing for another. Okay? Baddalu. This is another connection. When I first learned, you know the suit and tie that the Western, you can say, colonizers, whatever, conquerors, however you want to deem them, when the West really took supremacy, became paramount in the Arab world, Muslim world, if you wanted to rise up in ranks of whatever your profession, you would now wear a suit and tie because you're copying your master. Before that, everyone wore loose clothing. It was really in the Ottoman Empire in the beginning of the 19th century when the Germans came as advisors and they convinced the Sultan that, oh, no, you don't want those long jackets that you wear and those puffy-legged pants. You want to copy us and wear military uniforms, you know, kind of tight. And that's called badil. It's called what? Badil. Tabadil. Exchange one thing for another. And then I realized when I was living in Egypt, you know, the words, the letters, the names, the meanings, it's a constant thing happening in my head. I said, badla. That's what they call the Western fashion for men. They call it a badla. And they would say, badla or cravat. So they would mix the Italian word, because you know the high fashion and all that effect of Europe, and of course we would find it mainly in Alexandria, the Italians. How did that word get it? How did Egyptians start saying, I have to get a badla? See, that's how it first came, because my husband's Egyptian, so I had to say, yeah, the badla and the tuxedo for the wedding. What is going on here? Where is the shakhsiyat al-Arab? Where is your effect of your real self? Inshallah, it should be from the Rasul. Well, we don't want to go there because that's going to make us all sad. But let's go to one other connection between this. Hello. 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 Where did that come from? Hello. Now, I'm sad to tell you that when I was first in Egypt, I would get crazy when every Egyptian would answer, hello, hello. And I would always say, why are you saying hello? It's not hello, it's hello. I was saying this. I was actually teaching them this bad meaning. Hallu qawmahum dadal bawa. They're leading them to ruin. Does all this make sense to you? Maybe a few of you who are linguistically inclined will right away go, wow, cool, you know, I get that. That's really something. But even anyone ought to know that this badla and cravat business, you know, we're 22. Let's just say Pakistanis don't do it. Indonesians don't do it. Sorry. I get excited. What am I trying to tell you? Oh, are you going to tell me I'm a Taliban terrorist? Are you going to tell me I'm some sort of a extremist? Are you going to tell me that, excuse me, guess what's catching on big time now in America? It started with long, flowing, beautiful clothes for women. Now it's catching on for men. I think a lot of it has to do with the kafia, the Palestinian scarf, that they're all putting it on as a turban, or they're putting it on like a Saudi kafia style. Get ready. Big changes are coming. And I'm happy for it. Because actually, for me, the suit and tie is very ridiculous looking. Muslim men are supposed to have an aura, where they're supposed to cover that part in the front. If you really know what the hadith says, they're supposed to cover not just when they're at the beach below the knee in shorts. No. They're supposed to dress kind of like the Pakistanis dress. A long, loose shirt. With the pants, obviously, they shouldn't be tight leggings. They should be, I guess you could say, puffy pants or wide-legged pants. And as you know, the Indonesians and Malaysians, they have like a skirt. What's going on? Why? Why is that considered better looking when it's not at all better looking? And when they sit down, astaghfirullah al-azim. It's a good time to end it right here. 24 minutes. Assalamu alaikum.